Hello and good evening or good morning, everyone. I hope my audio is coming through. I have to do the stream myself tonight because unfortunately Guy is still recovering and I didn't want to push back the stream even further, so I decided that I'm sending all my best regards and best wishes to Guy. Hopefully he is getting well soon, but I wanted to do the stream anyway because we have so many great news to share that I figured it would be best to start right away. So there you go. Great. So all clear to hear. I'm happy to hear that because I had to quickly gobble together my own OBS setup for tonight. Usually Guy Sklenders from How to Be a Great GM, our friend and partner, is running the stream and is kind of acting as director, moderator, and the man behind the levers. But again, he's not here today, so I'm doing it myself. If there are any problems, I can see the chat. You can hear me. Hopefully you can see the picture. So yeah, there we are. Welcome to another episode of Mapping It Out. A week later than usually. By the end of each month, we're doing our monthly recap of what was going on in our development team, what's happening with DungeonFog, the Battlemap Editor, and DungeonFog Project DEIOS. If you have any questions, I'm trying to get my eyes on the chat. Please type question in front of it. That makes it easier for me to spot your questions. And I will do my best to answer them. And with that said, I think we're ready to go into the Battlemap news, which means that I have to push a button, which I need to find. It should be this one. Magic. Oh, I'm sorry. There are no amazing transitions today because again, that is kind of Guy's terrain. He also has the sound keyboard, so he can push the buttons for the amazing transition sounds. I don't know how he produces them. Anyways, we're starting off with the DungeonFog Battlemap Editor news, or general DungeonFog news. Which means that I need, again, to push some buttons here. There you go. Okay, looking at the roadmap, where are we so far? What has been happening? What is happening at the moment? I'm quite happy with where we are in terms of the goals for our Q1 and Q2 for the Battlemap Editor. The only thing left on the short-term list is the Asset Manager, which is making quite good progress. I'm not sure if we can finish it in Q2, by the end of Q2, because that is fairly soon. But at least we will be in a state where we can kind of put everything together over the summer and then release it. We were able to tackle a few things from our long-term list, the stage textures and the map backgrounds, which is one important thing that we are talking about today. We have a better snap to grid already established, plus a few other, let's say, convenience updates. The coordinate system is still in the works, but there will be coming a new tool that allows you to align assets based on their X and Y coordinates, which makes it even more efficient to really get them all in the same alignment. So that is coming. Before we're going to tackle doors and windows, we will definitely do paths and walls first, because we want to do something there. Yeah, and that's it. There are other things happening and are being progressed and developed. So I'm quite happy with where we are in terms of the Battlemap roadmap. But the important one, the cool one, the really amazing thing is coming hopefully this week. And that means that we are talking about patches and maintenance modes for a second. Okay, so first of all, if you didn't notice, there was recently, I think it was last week, there was a patch that we did to the Battlemap Editor. There have been quite a few patches happening in April. The last two brought better snap to grid, which I think is super helpful. And the second one that happened last week is we now have a new tool in the inspectors that quickly allows you to lock and unlock assets on stage, because previously you had to go into the layers menu, and then in the layers menu you were able to lock a specific layer. Now that is a bit easier now, because all you need to do is select a prop, a path, a token, whatever, and you have a little lock symbol at the top of your toolbar where you can quickly lock stuff. And also there were quite a lot of bug fixes with the latest patch from April 24th. I'm not going to talk about all the bug fixes that were in there. You can read that up in our changelog. If you don't know where to find it, it's dungeonfog.com/changelog, and I'm pretty sure someone is so kind and link it in the chat. So if you ever wonder what's going on in DungeonFog, what's happening, go and check out the changelog. You can find all the changes to the Battlemap Editor as well as to Project DEIOS in there. The reason why I'm pointing that out is because if everything goes as planned, we are going to have a maintenance mode tomorrow. We're aiming for somewhere around 12 a.m. Jesus, yes, it's 12 a.m. GMT +2, so our Viennese time here. And we hope that we can keep the maintenance mode down to 2, probably 3 hours before we then bring the service back online. The reason for that is we need to update stuff on the website, we need to update stuff on the Battlemap Editor, and we need to update stuff on our, what we call FogMS, our management system, our asset management system. So there's a lot of changes coming, there's a lot of stuff that we need to do. Most of it has been tested on the test server, but as always, bringing it live means that it still might break some things, and since some of those things might break maps, we decided to go into maintenance mode first. And once we're done with everything, we then bring back the services. So keep an eye out. Don't be confused if you're logging in tomorrow and you see our maintenance warning. That means that we're still working on it, trying to fix whatever we have recently broken. Oh, thanks, Bodhi. He has linked the changelog for those of you who are interested. There's quite a huge, massive, amazing, I'm super hyped about it, patch coming tomorrow, because we are going to bring the backgrounds and presets. We've been working on this now for over 2 months, and I'm super proud of it. I think it's such an improvement, and I'm going to talk you through it once more today so that you know what you can expect tomorrow and you can see it. Now, I have seen there a question in there which I will come back to in a minute. No, let's tackle it right now. Nicholas Kopp asked, what has to be finished until the Battlemap Editor can be merged with DEIOS? The answer to that is the Battlemap Editor needs to be upgraded into version 6, which is on the roadmap for this year. So we're definitely going to start on version 6 this year. Not sure if we can finish it, most likely not. Which means the second that version 6 is finished, we can then take that version 6 and bring it into the DEIOS application. Right. So backgrounds and presets. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, is Tony and I, together with the rest of the team, of course, but in terms of artistically, Tony and I have been working on a concept that we want to bring to you because we think it might make things much prettier and much easier to work with. And the idea is that we have been creating 20 by 20 grid sized seamless backgrounds. So there is, if you look behind the layers menu that I have here behind me, you can see that there is a new asset type, and the asset type is called the background. So what Tony did was he sat down and he made those, it's 2000 by 2000 pixels. Nope, that's wrong. It's 4,000 by 4,000 pixels, equaling 20 by 20 grids. And he made by hand those gigantic images. So they are backgrounds. They are, let's call them biome backgrounds, scene sets. Those are things that are completely hand-drawn, and I took them then and made them seamless on the corners so that you can take those images and repeat them if you want to make maps that are bigger than 20 by 20. If you have a map that's smaller than 20 by 20, you can still place it, but then you can shift it around to decide which focus point you want to put on your map. And that was quite some work, because Tony sat down and created I think it's 6 or 7 biomes at the moment. For all those biomes, he created the default background and then started to flavor it up with different, what we call transitional textures. So that's what you can see here on the side is, for example, you have, in this example here, you can see that we have a forest background that is then flavored with transitional textures on the corners, and we're going to look into a demo. I'm going to show that to you in a minute. But that is the whole idea. The idea is that you don't have to worry about setting a scene, a forest scene, a meadow, a water scene, deserts, barrens. You don't have to set those scenes using all the different types of brushes and texture combinations, but you have already preset ones, and we bring with them new textures that seamlessly work along those new backgrounds, which I think makes those battle maps visually so amazing. Here's an interesting question. Okay, tackling a few questions as I can see them here. Question number 1, how long is maintenance expected to take? I previously said about 2 to 3 hours. Now Bodhi said in here in the chat, if I had to guess, oh no, that was the Incubus. No, I think if we have it, like, we're aiming for an hour and a half, but experience has shown that things always go wrong at some point. So if you think about 3 hours, I think we're kind of in the safe space. Keep an eye on Discord, keep an eye on our social media. We will keep you posted. We will keep you posted on Discord if something goes wrong and we need to extend our maintenance time. And we will definitely post on we blast on all social media platforms the second that maintenance mode is over. So starting at 12 and going to probably 3 p.m. Would be a safe bet from our side. Okay, next question. Couldn't something similar be done with using stable diffusion? Well, maybe, but at the moment, so here's the thing. We are interested in AI generated content. We're not completely against it. However, we feel unsafe at the moment, and we're insecure about the implications. Because, for example, Tony is someone, he sits down, he draws them by hand, and I think the fact that he handcrafts those things, and he handcrafts the textures and the assets, gives those battle maps a style that is absolutely unique. Now, if we start to use AI-generated content, some of that craftsmanship is handed to an AI. And as long as Tony is fine with it and works with us in training something like that, I would be willing to do and experiment with it. But as long as those AIs are grabbing more or less wildly over the internet and stealing from, I would say, stealing from artists who probably didn't consent, I think from an IP perspective, like intellectual property perspective, this is a bit too Wild West for me to actually already go down this route. Now, again, as I said, we are monitoring the scene and we're looking at what is going on. And the second that we find a model where we can say, okay, this treats the artist fairly, and this treats and this creates something that is artistically appeasing, we will be willing to work with it. Until then, I think, again, it reminds me a bit of the Wild West, where it's like shoot first, ask later. So we will tread slowly there and see how things are developing before we actually start working with it. I hope that answers your question. Question plus. Are there plans to integrate something like generative AI into the Battlemap Editor? So, as I said before, we are thinking about things that we can do. I don't think that we will start with image generation. However, I do enjoy ChatGPT quite a lot. And I think we could use ChatGPT to help you create room descriptions based on what you place on your battle map. So like a scenery descriptions. If you place trees and bushes and shrubberies and vines and things like that on a map, I think we can use a chatbot to interpret that and create room or scene descriptions. And we have been dabbling around with it a little bit. We haven't put a lot of effort in it yet, but I can tell you that this is actually something that we want to do in the future and probably even in the near future. So that is something that we're experimenting with. Exactly, Colin. Exactly that. To generate read aloud text based on what the map represents, what is drawn on the map. And if you think about the way that the Battlemap Editor treats those things, like treats a room, it is a contained object. We know the room boundaries, we know what's inside, we know what the wall textures are made of and the floor textures are made of, and we can list the props, the assets that are in there. So I'm fairly certain that if we find a clever way to train a chatbot, it can actually create read aloud descriptions for specific rooms. But again, not something that is currently happening, more something that is, if we would have a research and development lab, then I would put it there and say, okay, this is something where we're just experimenting with at the moment. Let me check. Are there any more questions? Not so far. All right. So coming back to backgrounds. The next slide shows you. So this is just a selection. I think we have about 40, probably up to 60. I don't know right now, of transitional textures. All of them are created in alignment with the biomes that we already have. And all of them, as far as I could test them and as far as Tony and I were able to tweak them, really nicely blend into each other. And I'm going to show you examples in a minute. So I very roughly sorted them by the biomes that are existing here, which is the dry biome, which could be deserts or barrens, rocky mountainous biome, then forest or meadows and plains, and forests, and then, because I didn't have enough space on that slide, there are a lot of different water transitions in there as well. So with the patch tomorrow, you will get all of them, and you will also get, this is also just a selection, based on all the biomes, we have created different new paths that you can use, mainly terrain paths, that you can use to create cliff sides, crevasses. There is a dirt road in there, which was kind of experimental when we worked on it, but I liked it so much that we said, okay, let's keep it. And we will be adding more paths as we introduce more biomes in the future. So I'm sorry, I'm blocking stuff. Let me see. No, I can't. Can I move myself? Now I'm here. Now I'm there. Okay, so here you can see the other ones. And then there are a few props, not so many. It wasn't so much about props and more about the backgrounds, the brushes, and the paths that you can use to create terrain. And we already have a vast library of assets that we have. That is something that Bodhi and I have been doing last week. We sat down, went through all the existing asset packs and tagged them to create kind of search connections that if you are creating a specific biome using our preset system, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, you can easily find assets that nicely fit those biomes. And moving forward from here, once we've released that, we will collect feedback. We will listen to you and your experience. We will listen to what you think about what we did there. And if we get the feeling that you enjoyed this and this is something that brings us forward, our plan, so the plan that I had with when I discussed it with Tony, was that for every new pack that we will release in the future, it will basically be a pack of props, brushes, and backgrounds that allow you to create a specific scene or environment. So right now we're just talking about nature environments, but of course there are caves, dungeons, prisons. We have a lot of packs out there, and a lot of those packs might ask for a nice background or new brushes in there. So that is something that we're going to address if we get the feeling that you really enjoy what we're doing here. If it makes sense. If we get the feedback that you don't like it and think that this is stupid, well then probably we won't continue in that direction. No, it will. So the Incubus just said, this is honestly either put me off the board or make my job so much easier. This is not going to put you off the board. This is hopefully making your job so much easier, because it will allow you, and I've been doing it. I've been creating those presets for the past couple of weeks, and it's such a time saver. But the artistic eye to understand, where do you want to put the focus on the map? How do you want to balance out the details? That's still your job. So I think it scratches off a few, probably hours of your timetable, which you can hopefully reinvest in making the scene even more interesting from a narrative standpoint. I can't wait to see what you guys are going to do with it. I'm super excited about this. Okay, so the last part before we go in a quick demo here is I've been using the word presets, and I want to explain what that means. Colin Porter says, I think this is useful. Truthfully, it is currently a struggle to do outdoor maps and travel maps. Thank you. And I think I agree. For some reason, maybe because, like, I don't know, probably because my campaigns, my home office games currently are mainly outdoor. I do enjoy creating outdoor maps, but I do feel that it is time consuming to get the stage, the ground, the terrain looking nicely, because you have to combine so many different brushes, and I hope that solves it now. Okay, presets. So the idea is that we not only have drawn those background images and uploaded them into the into the asset manager, into the props tool, and we're like, well, we're done. We've done that. Check. Now go work with it. But we sat down and created for every biome that we have up to 3. And that's just the beginning. Like, again, we try to feel our way around what is necessary and what is too much. So we started with 3 preset maps. All of those maps are 20 by 20 grids at the moment. And again, I say at the moment because if you enjoy that, it's not a big problem for us to create 40 by 40 maps, for example, as well in the presets. If some of you have already worked with templates, you know how it works. It's basically a preset map. And for each biome, so whenever you press the Create New Map button in the future, you will get the option to create an empty map. You will create the option to create maps based on the map templates that you have already created for yourself. And then you can find those preset categories, and each category contains up to 3 presets in that biome. So we're currently looking at the desert preset, which contains a desert plain, which basically just means it's a plain map with just the essentials to have a desert. This one, so each preset also contains 1 map preset that is for free users and only uses free assets. So you will see that we are going to unlock at least some of those backgrounds and some of those brushes for free users as well. And then we have 2 premium ones, and the reason they're premium is because some of the textures, some of the props in there are for premium use only, but it gives even free users a chance to play around with it and experience what the new presets are doing. In our example here, we can see there is a desert plain, a desert oasis, and a desert questions. Will those presets always be the same, or will they alter in some way? Oh, you're thinking about some kind of randomization that might be in there. Not at the moment. They are pre-drawn and you can use them. They are open, like the brushes are exposed, the background is exposed, the props are exposed. You can move them around as you like, but there is no generator included that might reshuffle them. I do like the idea though, and it kind of plays into something that we want to do probably next year, and that is doing generators for maps. So that thought is saved. But at the moment they are static. Like someone, me, Tony, Bodhi, someone did them, and we provide them, and you can take them and start working right away there or adjust them to your needs. Let me see, there might have been more questions there. Wow, chat is super active today. Battle Source, can't wait to mess around with those. Question, will those be the same? I already answered that one. No, I think there are no questions at the moment. Right, so why don't we, I think the next one already says demo. Why don't we look into one of those presets so that you can get an understanding of what it is, what I did there. So right now we're in this is my dev environment on the live server, because we're still in the process of prepping everything for the release tomorrow, which means I don't have those presets yet. They're all collected in one template selection here. And here you can see all the different templates that are currently loaded in here. And which one is a good example? Well, maybe let's look at the Oasis. Let's open that one up. That might Oh, wait, I probably need to name it. Oasis till test. There you go. Okay, loading takes a little bit because there are so many assets. So I tried to include not everything. Not every template contains like props. I think not everyone contains props. All of them contain the background image and brushes. And I also included something that I find very helpful at the moment. I like the artistic style. You will have to tell me if you enjoy those or if we should get rid of it. When we look at the content, we can see that there is, I've folded it up already. There is, wait, let me do it like this so that you can actually see what I'm doing. There is vegetation in here, which goes away when I hide it. There is the statue hat, the buried one. I can hide it. And then this is what I'm talking about. There is a specific shape in here using the shape tool that actually utilizes the freehand square grid. So this map does have the regular grid, but I turned it off and instead gave it a layer with the grid texture that you can find in the classic dungeon sets. The reason why I do this is because I personally, and that's just a style choice, I personally started to enjoy the freehand grid more than the regular grid. And using it as a shape means that I can subtract from that shape, which exposes areas that have no grid, or which allows me to put like palm trees over the grid, which I think makes maps more dynamic in their look and feel. And to give you an example of how this works, I did that in all the preset maps, and which allows you to use that grid, which hopefully also for those of you who do not know that trick, teaches you how you can work with that grid. And of course, eventually, I think when we're talking V6 and all the updates that come to version 6, we will then also look at a way to make this a little less workaroundy when it comes to using the grid. So right now for me, the grid, the stage grid, which we have here, is basically is a secret work grid that I use if I need it. But whenever I want to have a grid that my players can see, I use one of the hand-drawn grids that we got from Tony in the classic dungeon update. Right, so we can see that there is the grid. Then we have the water hole, which is, if we look inside of it, which is basically just, there is one asset, the sand pile from the Lost Civilization pack. So those would be recommended as suitable assets for this environment, for this biome. And then we have a swarm of fish swimming in there, some water, even more water, some sand, which was colored, and the sand hole, which is almost invisible at this stage. It just gives a nice background texture here. So whenever you create a map based on the Oasis, you would get this, and all of that stays editable for you. So if you don't like any of it, if you're like, okay, that's really cool, but I don't like the vegetation, I'm not going to delete it. Oh, wait, I did, yes. I created a new one based on it, so I'm not destroying the original template. Not that I have done that before and had to redo some of my maps. So if I want to get rid of them, boop, I can quickly get rid of them. The statue buried is currently invisible. By the way, I've been talking about the lock button. Here you can see the lock button. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of the water hole. And then we have those sandstone with a little bit of vegetation in there. And we might want to replace that with, and here you can see all the other textures that are available there as well. Let's replace them with sand hills. There you go. And now you can see we have some of those bumps and lumps here that are now colorizing it. And this one invisible, visible. This is basically the background. So if I get rid of all of it, just leaving you with the plain background, then you can see this is the plain background, and I just set a specific stage texture that if I get rid of the background, I would see that there is still a repeating texture behind it. And that is basically how all the presets are created. Whatever preset you take, you can find the same procedure, the same way, which should make it super easy for you to get accustomed to it and start working, expanding, using it for your own maps. I have another question here from the Incubus. Could you remind us how exactly the lock button works? Does it simply make them unselectable? Oh, right. Okay, sure, of course. So, first of all, when you place a map background, it is by default. It's always placed at the bottom of the list, of your layers list, and is by default locked. Because usually you don't want to touch the map background all the time. Now, if I want to place a prop, let's just, nope, we don't want any backgrounds. Where was it? I previously said it was in the hill. Probably was there. No. Was it Wilderness? Lost Civilization? I can't remember. Let's just place any prop for now before I start searching. Let's go into the cemetery and let's place a crypt here. So now we have the crypt here. So what happens when I press the lock button? Well, first of all, if the second I unselect it, I cannot lock those two. I cannot select them anymore. They are not selectable because they are now locked, which means I have to go into the layers and manually re-unlock them, and then they're back and selectable. Yeah, that's it. That's how the lock button works. It just makes it unselectable, and you have to go into your layers list and reactivate it so that you can then select it. But especially when you're working with backgrounds or when you're working with huge chunks of stuff that is getting in the way of selecting details, locking them quickly, I think, is super helpful. Yes, exactly. There you go. You can by reading the chat, you can see the map makers who are like really proficient with the tool and know where the pitfalls are, and see like, oh, finally, that's going to make my life easier. There you go. And talking about proficient map makers, are there any more questions in regards to the templates? We can, while you're making up your mind, I'm not going to save that one. Yep, I think I've reloaded, so let's go back. Yeah, I did. Create a new map. Let's look at, well, let's look at that one, because there we can see then we can see some paths. So here's another one, and quickly looking at the content list, we can again see that there is the square grid, then there is some sand texture, and then we have the sand cliffs, and each of those is already a path. So if you want to adjust it to change the cliff faces, that's super easy to do. All you need to do is select them, edit the path, and change the path points. And there you go, you've already created something new. And then I just, again, when you look at it, you can see that cliff, dry sand. I used some dry sand with darker colors to create a little bit of visual height here. So I think this is super, super cool for people who already very much know what they're doing, but as well as for new people who do not yet know how to get started on the Battlemap Editor and probably want to use something pre-made to then expand on it. And I can already tell that volcanic biomes and jungle biomes are already in the making. And then there's another one that I want to get tackled soon, which is Arctic. And then I think I might need to look at the list, but basically then we are happy with the nature outdoor biome sets that we have. You might come up with things that we've been missing, but I'm pretty sure I cannot think of any right now. And then we will transition into indoor stuff that we want to do. Right. Let me quickly see. There were no more questions so far, which is great. So the next segment is now talking about those awesome map makers in our community that are publishing maps on the community hub and that we want to highlight in our monthly segment called... Wait. That's not going to help. I need to first go here. Community Spotlight. Right. Every month we go into the Community Hub, which is a section on the DungeonFog website. When you're logged in, you can find that there is the Community Hub. You can create your own creator's profile and share maps on your own creator page. You can even set it up and customize it to some extent to have your own little creators page. And whenever you share a map, which means that you make a map public, there is a button. You can make those maps public. Every other DungeonFog user gets access to those maps, and they can like the maps, they can clone the maps, and they can take those maps and make them their own, which means that it is super easy. If you don't want to create a map in the first place, you can just go into the Community Hub and browse for maps. And hopefully you will find one that you can use for your game. Thank you very much, by the way. I just recently used the doc that we have been featuring in one of the community spotlights for one of our games. And there are so many cool maps out there that you can easily take and probably just need to do a bit of tweaking to fit your personal game better, and then you're good. And then you already have a map. So that's the Community Hub. And every month we go into the Community Hub, we as a team, we as a DungeonFog team, and we look at the maps that are in the hottest map section. Because whenever a map gets liked, whenever a map gets cloned, it is getting ranked internally so that the tool can present you the hottest maps of a specific time frame. And for us, this means that we're constantly watching the hottest map section, and we're collecting maps that made it into the hottest map section. Now, if we wanted to talk about all the maps that made it in there, we would have to spend the whole stream going through it, because there are dozens of maps that are getting into the hot map section. So what we do is we as a team, we sit together and we pick maps that we personally also feel like they are specifically worth a highlight because we found them just super cool and amazing. So how do you make your maps show up in our community spotlight? Well, very simple. Create maps, share them, and the more versatile your maps are, the better the description, the more beautiful they look, the better the chances that people like them and clone them to use them for themselves, which means better chances to end up in the hottest map section. Right. Um, I have a question about that. Does it live update? For example, if I make a map public, then change it, does it update? Yes, it does. So when you, it only the second that the user grabs the map, this save state is transitioned into the user account. So if you create a map and you make it public, and then you start changing all the stuff in there, you will eventually change the map that was made public. It's not like that we save the map in a state when you put it public, but we're basically just internally linking to the map that is in your account. So be aware of that, be careful. It not happened once to me that I was like, that's an old map I would like to tweak. And then I realized, oh wait, I'm tweaking it for a home game, but it's a public map, so I'm currently tweaking the public map. It has its pros and cons. Like, it allows you to make a map public and then do adjustments to it as you feel more confident as a map maker, as you feel like there are areas that you want to tweak. But on the other hand, it runs with the risk that you accidentally change a map that you made public, and people who enjoyed the previous version are not able to get an older version of it. So just keep that in mind. Right, so congratulations to those map makers that I'm going to feature tonight. All of you will find that you have the community spotlight badge in your community hub profile. So each one featured gets this beautiful badge here. Sorry, I have to point into that direction now. And let's just start with the first map. That is by Beetle. We're going to see Beetle again tonight because Beetle was super active in April. And there are some really amazing maps out there. But the Stonehill Inn made it into our selection because it is a great example of what you can do with the classic dungeon designs. Because we have those classic dungeon asset packs and brushes and stuff. So if you want to do black and white maps, exactly. I would like to see them much more often. I've been starting to use them myself. When I want to quickly sketch stuff, and then it's super easy to quickly transform it into something like into a colored map, because again, you just select the room and change the textures on it, and done. The room is colored. You select a table and change it into the colored table, and it's done. So that, I think, is a really, really nice example. The Stonehill Inn, and I'm blocking the name, so if you don't know what you're looking for, I'm going to shift myself now back over here. If you don't know what you're looking for, it's called the Stonehill Inn by Beetle. And I'm pretty sure if you say the name 3 times, the artist will suddenly appear and help you map making. Colin asks, could you make this a filter? Have all the textures automatically go into the black and white version? So there is a filter system. If you don't know, there is a stage filter system that allows you to make a black and white filter on the maps, which is not the same thing, because not all the assets, like you can apply black and white to all the assets, but you have to draw assets specifically for black and white to make them look better. Otherwise, you have all those different gray tones in there as well. And we don't have a representation, a black and white representation for each existing asset, which means that this is not working at the moment. Although eventually we will be, as we create more and more assets, we are also creating more and more classic assets for the dungeon pack, classic dungeon pack. So yes, Beetle map. There you go. Okay, Next one is also, I think, very pretty, is the Fallen Angels Lair by VMO 4930. I think it's well executed in colors and perspective. I'm not sure about the size, but that's the cool thing. Like if you take that map and you adjust the grid to something that you see fit for your game, you can have a very narrow thing that just hides a cave behind the waterfall, or you can have a massive cliff battle. Lord God just asked, what happened if you use the black and white filter on classic asset maps? Does it open a nexus? Maybe. Don't try it. Just don't. Just even, especially not you, Lord God, because if you get sucked in to your computer, who's going to defend the title? Just think about it. So, Fallen Angels Lair by VMO is, I think, also a really nice map. Beautiful perspective, nice focal point, well executed. Congratulations. Then we have a nice map. I really enjoyed looking at that map because the Catfog Village Day. So the Catfog Village exists in 2 map versions, and if you search for it, you will see that there is a day version and a night version of it. And I posted the day version, although I do think the night version is also really, really, really cool. Those maps are done by Nighthawk, and if you ever need a little village for your players to quickly take a rest, explore, meet an NPC, get a new quest, have a look at it. I think it's really nicely done, and again, the transition between the nighttime and the daytime are really cool. And then we come back to an artist that we've met before. I already said that Beetle was super active in April. And that's the Gods Revelry. I'm not able to spell it. Again, done by Beetle. And I think this is, in terms of architecture and classic battle map design, I think also quite a pretty gem. It's also labeled, and there's a lot of other stuff in there. Nice brushworks, nice room decoration. Again, from an architecture standpoint, interesting. So it's not regular, what we all know, manor or stable layout, but I think it has a very interesting architecture to it. There you go. It feels like a real building. It probably was based on a real building. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure that if my players are ever going to need to explore a bigger manor, this map might make it into one of my home games, because I really like looking at it and looking at all the details. I really, really enjoyed it. Right, and last but not least, we have someone who's also in the chat today. So congratulations. Here is a beautiful forest scene by the Incubus. It was I think it still is in the hottest map section at the moment. And has been cloned and liked quite a lot in April, and therefore we said, okay, although you are a regular guest here in our community spotlight, this was another one that I think is super cool for random encounters, random forest encounters. You might want to rework it a little bit tomorrow. There might be new backgrounds and cool brushes that you could use, just saying. But the forest battle map by the Incubus is the last one that made it today into our community spotlight. Oh, I'm spacing out. So, with that said, a lot of DungeonFog news, a lot of Battlemap news. So now we're going to switch gears and get ready to talk a little bit about what has been happening in April in Project DEIOS. Usually I think there is a transitional video, which I forgot about. So let me just quickly do, because we do separate segments. Let me just quickly do this. I'm sorry, it's going to be weird. Don't worry about it. Hello, welcome to our segment about Project DEIOS. What has been going on in April, what is currently the state of development for the World Map Editor, and of course the City Map Editor. Today we're going to look at the recent patch, the upcoming patch, and the latest patch notes, as well as the new asset pack that has been released today, alongside with news and concepts and ideas about the City Map Maker. So hang in there, we're going to talk about Project DEIOS now. Right, again, if you have any questions, don't forget to type question in front of it. If you've just recently joined for the DEIOS segment, if you put a question in front of it, I can catch it. Guy unfortunately is sick and is still recovering, so I'm running this on my own today, which makes it a bit more complicated because usually Guy is catching the questions and is asking them to me. Now I have to have an eye on the presentation, the demos, the chat, the stream, the tools, and all that stuff. So forgive me if I'm a bit confused. I'll do my best to handle everything my own. Right, okay, so let's talk about the patches. So there have been has been a busy day. Latest patch was 0.5.8, which solved a lot of bugs related to the blue screen issue that many of you have reported. That was released on April the 15th, and by now you should not have any of those flickering blue screens when you open Project DEIOS, regardless of whether of what graphic card and GPU CPU setup you have. We were able to trace that bug and squash it, so that should be fixed. We also had some login issues in the previous build that we have also fixed with 0.5.8. Then in the morning we released 0.5.9, which just came with the new asset pack, because there are some bigger changes to the World Map Editor in terms of stability and performance that are still in QA. They need to be tested, so I'm expecting them to be released next week. And if you're wondering why when you open DEIOS you're already on 0.5.10, that's because our 0.5.9 did not tackle one specific login case and therefore locked out Bodhi. And since we don't want to lock out Bodhi from DEIOS, we had to patch so that even Bodhi can enter the new build. I'm doing fine till. Thank you very much, Damien. Right, so 0.5.9 is already out there. You should be able, if you're following the patches, your auto updater should present to you actually now 0.5.10, which just has a quick fix in the login area. But the new asset pack should already be there. If you haven't been updating DEIOS recently, as always, just go to deios.dungeonfog.com, log into your account manager, and download the latest DEIOS version from there. That's another way to get the recent, the latest alpha build. That's what I was trying to say. So, what asset pack was in there? Well, I think a really cool one. It's the Shadow Lords asset pack. When we created the when we started with Project DEIOS, we were approached by oh my god, it's so late, I'm spacing out. Nope, Name's gone. Sorry, can't think of it. No, I know it's there, but it's not there. Either way, we wanted to have a vampiristic, dark, gothic setting, and Keora sat down and created those assets, which are, I think, brilliant. You have those, how do you call them, bramble vines. You have those dead trees. You have those gothic cathedrals, the gargoyles, the castles, the Dead House Sonata. Thank you very much, Damien. Dead House Sonata was, or is, I'm not sure what's going on there, is a computer game made in in progress, and they wanted to work with us on something that allows them to create their mini maps or their environmental maps for Dead House Sonata. And we sat down with them and we talked about their expectations, and they described it to us as a gothic vampire setting. And so the Shadowlord setting was born. Really close, Damien. Right, so I think if you have some evil areas on your world maps that you want to decorate, you are now more than suited, because there's so much. Also, when you look at those, like, this is actually, you can use those components to combine them to existing buildings. But even having it as just this little floating spiral tower somewhere in a forest or on a mountain, I think is super interesting and intriguing for players. So that asset pack has been released, is available now in the build, and you can already use it for creating your world maps. Yeah. Thank you. I completely forgot. So you haven't been seeing my patch note stuff as well. Well, there you go. I'm sorry. Yeah, Guy, why didn't we switch? Oh, right, because Guy's not here and I have to do all of that myself. Thanks, Nicholas. I thought I already did that. Okay, so now you're seeing it, and here you have those bramble vines that I've been talking about, the Gothic cathedrals. This was the spire that I was talking about, the dead trees, the graves, the tombstones, those Gothic gates. I think they are amazing. They look sexy, don't they? I love them. They're amazing. So this is already on the latest version. You can already have it, and you can start using it on your world maps. For next week, again, I've been talking about performance and stability updates. You'll see it in the patch notes. As far as I know, we have several fixes that comes to loading times on startup, because with more and more assets being added to the application, it takes longer to load, and you currently just, when you open DEIOS, you see a black screen for about 5 seconds. And then it starts to come up. So we've addressed that. Starting next week, it will only take probably a second to come up. It also not a black screen, but with a nice loading image there. And the way we have restructured our atlases, and that's something that we're currently working on, the scaling of the assets using mid-maps is being finished. There are some more performance updates when it comes to loading and placing assets and loading bigger maps, as well as some crashes that have been reported and bug fixes. All of them will be tied together in a patch coming next week. It is in QA at the moment, so we're testing it. It looks good, but we said we want, because there's, especially because the loading of assets has changed internally, we want to make sure that it doesn't break all the maps and that it loads properly and there's no problem with placing assets. So it needs a bit more thorough testing. And so we said we're going to wait and test until next week. And I would assume somewhere mid to end next week, we given that we don't find any criticals that we need to fix first, we will be ready to hand out a performance patch. My apologies. Talking. Okay, so that's where we are in terms of world map editing, but I'm pretty sure you're also really keen on knowing what's going on with the city map maker. Okay, again, for those of you who do not know, the world map maker is it would be wrong to say it's finished. The development on the world map editor has been halted because we wanted to start working on the city map maker, wanted to change gears a little bit, and also we thought that some of the things that we are experimenting with in the city map maker might be a good learning point for us when we return back to development of the world map maker. Therefore, starting in... So concept was started in November, and development basically started at the kind of transition between December and January. So since then we have been working on the city map maker. And if you're interested in the concepts and the ideas that went into it, then I can only recommend that you check out the other Mapping It Out streams. They are all chapterized, so you can just click on the YouTube segment and you can jump there. You don't have to watch the full stream every time. I'm going to build some of the concepts that I'm talking about based on the fact that we have been talking about previous concepts. I'm not going to pick you up at the beginning. I'm just talking about what have we been doing in April and what was our focus there. So if you're super confused and you have no idea what I'm rambling about, just put it in chat and I will explain a little bit. There is a question from Ariana that said, maybe I missed it, but is there a way to change the default color of assets in DEIOS? Dunes and sands are yellow, but what if I want to have a red desert? Not yet. This is actually going to happen once we transition back to the world map editor, although I know that Andre has addressed me and said, well, we could, with the mid maps and the new asset atlas being finished, it would be easier to tackle it. So Andre suggested that we might put this earlier on our timeline. I cannot promise it, but this is planned the same as with the Battlemap Editor, but even a bit better, because the way that Keora has created those assets is that the line art, the first highlight color and the base color are separated color layers, so you will be able to adjust them differently. So you could color just the line art if you want to have something that looks like brownish ink. You can color the highlight if you just want to change the highlight color on an asset, or the base color, and of course you can colorize the whole thing in total. So I hope that answers your question. It is on the roadmap. It might come earlier than we expect because there are some synergies with what we're doing right now, which means that we might tackle this earlier. But if not, the second that the city map maker goes into alpha, we will go back to world map editor and tweak it, which brings me to another set of questions that I got here, and those are, what do you think when city map maker will go into alpha? Followed by Kenrek, who said, is there an ETA for the city map maker for public use? Both of your questions can be answered with, we are hoping and we are aiming to have the city map alpha accessible to you in late summer, early fall, because you will see we are making really good progress. We are now April was about fighting some concept struggles and make some base definitions, but I think we have solved them to some degree now, which means that we're making good progress, and I'm quite confident that in late summer, early fall, we will be ready to hand it out. I had a conversation with Keora this month. He is starting on the first city assets. We have them as prototypes already in there, but they need to be fully colorized. And we will talk about assets much more in the next few streams, because that is when the asset placement is being addressed. So with that said, let's look at what have we been doing in April, and why was it complicated to some degree. Road styles and intersections. That's basically the main topic that we have been dealing with in April. So I tried to put together a little presentation for you so that you can follow along. What you can see here is different styles for roads. Like it could be a hamlet dirt road. It could be a cobblestone city road. It could be a village road. It could be like a sand dune desert road. Or if you're more into the very abstract Mike Schley maps, it could be just a very abstract, non-detailed road. So what we tried to do, what we tried to understand is how can we create, or how can we support different road styles without making a system that is so complex internally that every artist will just run away screaming when we say, hey, do you want to do some road designs for us? But you have to follow this, and that rule. And keep it most flexible when it also comes to different road styles for settings. So we were looking at basically two prime concepts here. The one was, we said maybe we can use the same technology and concept that we are using for our paths in the Battlemap Editor, which is what we call a non-directional, sorry, yes. Did we call, no, sorry, we're calling it a directional texture, seamlessly directional texture. I think that's how we called it. So that's what you can see here. It is not seamless on two sides, but it is seamless on two other sides. That's basically the same as the paths work in the Battlemap Editor. And we said maybe we can use that to create interesting roads, because that would allow the artist to say, okay, I create 3 variants of this, but I can design, me as an artist, I can design how the corners, the road corners are. And then I make 3 variants, and you just put them, reshuffle them together to create those roads. Because they are, as a whole road, they are seamlessly repeatable top and bottom, means that if you want to do a modern road, you could do something like this as well. So that was the first approach. And there are some advantages to it and some disadvantages to it. So what we tried was, we tried to test it out, make a demo build in our prototyping environment, and see how it works. And here you can see, again, this is like, we did a very, very cheap test texture for it. So the texture itself is not super sexy, but for testing, it was enough for us to understand what is happening. And I do think that it has its merits. However, and now I have to move myself again. However, it also has its flaws, because when When you create a texture like that and you start to draw, and again, I have a demo prepared, we can look at that in a second. It means that those textures are being distorted when they are curved and bended. So there is a slight distortion on the textures, and the longer each segment of the texture is, the more you can see the distortion. The shorter the segment, the lower the chances to make a distortion, because you have a lot of segments that can curve around, but that makes it really hard for the artist to actually make a distinct road segment with artistic input. So we tried to find something in between that is not too heavy on the bending distortion, but still enough space for the artist to add flavor to each segment variant. However, when it comes to road intersections, we're running into a problem, because the way that those roads, like the road corners, and I think you can see it here, and you can see it here. I hope the stream is allowing the details. If not, don't worry, in the demo we're going to see it. The way that those pathing tools work is that they don't really nicely blend into each other. So we actually sat down and by the way, here's another example with the modern roads tool. And don't worry, it's a very cheap, quickly done texture that I gobbled together from some of the textures that I had. So the way that it repeats is not really beautiful here. But you can see that there is some distortion and some bending going on, and you can very easily see how they not blend into each other nicely when it comes to intersections. And we wanted to get that solved. So we said, okay, can and how can we make it work? One idea that we quickly threw out of the window was, what if we use something like an intersection overlay, some asset that can be scaled and put over the intersection to actually hide that those segments are overlapping. But whatever we tried, there's always this little detail here that makes it stand out, and it was not pretty. We didn't like it. So Ilya actually sat down and created quite a complicated, but I think really clever concept of mesh bending. So what he proposed is that we take each asset and we take 1/2 of the path, and we can apply this bending rule to it, so that you can, I think you can see it here quite nicely, so that you have the first half, which is this one, applied to a mesh that is bended and then released on the other end. So basically it's like a curvature in here. And because we can do this with both sides, we can actually create those bended roads, which looks like this. So to some extent it works, but there is a lot of distortion going on that actually starts to mess with like high level detail textures, and it will always, we will not be able to completely get rid of that distortion segment here. It's not as critical here. So the interesting part is we did not create this asset. This asset is created, or this crossroad is created out of this image. We used this image here. We applied the formulas that Ilya constructed, and we got this out of it. And I think this is pretty decent. This looks really cool. However, with those cobblestones, you can still see the distortion here. So we were, there's a bit of a decision process going on where we said, okay, can we get rid of the distortion even more, and how much time will it take? And there is another, let's say, downside to this as well, because the way that we're doing it, having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, having 8 exits is the maximum on a crossroad that this system can deal with. Less than 8, totally fine. If you have a city center where 8 streets come together, totally fine. If you have 9, it will break. It cannot deal with 9 kind of intersections. So we said, do we want to put more time into this? Do we want to work on that system, which might be time consuming because you have to deal with the edge cases, you have to deal with the distortion and all of that stuff? Or do we want to try a different approach? And the different approach is, sorry, here you can, by the way, here you can see the distortions even better. Like for this crossroad, you have the path coming in here and everything looks bended and distorted. Now, if you think about how that looks on a map where you have roads coming together, I think this is a problem. Aesthetically, this is nothing that I would find pleasing on the map when every crossroad has such a high distortion on it, which means that, again, we cannot use it like it is. We would have to tweak it. We would have to go back in and find better ways to make that calculation. And before we did that, we said, okay, wait. Before we run into a corner, what about the second approach? And the second approach is what we are already doing with rivers, but we need to tweak some things there. And this is this approach here. If you look at what the world map editor is already doing, sorry, my mouse needs to be here. If you look at what the world map editor is already doing, rivers have to some extent solved the crossroad problem, the intersection problem already, because they are nicely blending into those corners. So the question is, what if we use the same logic that we use for rivers and use a seamless texture? So not a directional texture, but in all seamless in all directions. And we just put that in here, and then we basically just use a pathing alongside the corners to create those grass edges or whatever it is. So if you're an artist, you can create the seamless texture that defines the road, and you can create specific corner elements that kind of define how it is, like, for example, a sidewalk, or again, a grass curvature, or rocks, whatever you like. You can define this, and in the combination of the background texture and this this directional pathing along the corners, we can make that work, which means that if you look at this, you basically have a path on the side, and an optional center element if you want to put something like the traffic signs into the center road element. Okay, so that one is what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to work on that because the previous one is on the prototype, and we've been playing around with it, and we said, okay, I think we can get this far, but probably not further. And now we're looking at the second option, and if we like the second option, we will say, okay, let's go this route first. We are not going to abandon the idea of the pathing tool because we're going to use it later for cliffs and terrain. So the code's already there. We just need to adapt it for the other tools. But right now we think if we follow the previous concept, we might be putting ourselves in a corner and before we put more time into developing it, we're trying the second approach first and see how that looks. I've seen that there are some comments in here, so I'll quickly answer them. I think it all depends on the scale and how large the roads are. It looks bad zoomed in incredibly, but is the distortion noticeable in a large city? That's a really good point. Probably not. However, the way we want to make the city map maker is that you can, if you want to run a chase sequence through alleyways, you might want to use it more or less. It's not like there is a step down to the Battlemap size of a map, but there is a district size and a city map size, and we want to be able to go down to district size, which means that on this zoom level you might be seeing the distortions, whereas on a huge scale, like if you have a big city, you don't see any textures at all on a big city. We could just use flat color and it wouldn't change it. But if we don't pay attention to this detail now, it is most likely going to bite us once we are at a point where we say, okay, now we want to zoom in, and we realize that there are distortions in there and the whole tool is built around it. So we want to make sure that we tackle those things first. Oh, so Nicholas basically said the same thing, but the editor should also work for small villages. There you go. Nicholas just answered it. I'm sorry. If I would have read on, thank you, Nicholas. You kind of, I said the same thing that you said. So just saying, this is and while I'm doing that, let me just quickly launch the demo. This is where we are at the moment, and we've spent our April on working for the first concept. We've realized that we do not want to lose, because the roads tool is almost finished, and the intersection is an important one, and it should work because it will work as a foundation for everything else that we're doing. So we want to make it right, but I don't want to run into the same problems that we did last year when we were working on the tectonics, and it was like, there's so much more we can do and it's not perfect, let's tweak. So we decided that we basically want to time box our road development to the end of May, and then we should and want to be finished with roads as much as possible, because we still want to have enough time to deal with the house or building prop placement alongside the road. And therefore we said, okay, we have that version, and here you can see it. So this is our prototype environment here. So let me go into the roads tool. So we have that version already working. If I want to create a new road, I can pick the freehand curvature thing, and let's start to add a new road here. Let's link it up with that one. So there are no buildings appearing at the moment because that was not our main focus. But I can activate place crossroads. We can see that this is not looking super nice. So let's start with a road here and place a crossroad. It's a bit offset at the moment. Shift it. So looking at the comment from Colin, based on the zoom level, obviously it doesn't matter whether or not they have a certain texture to it, but the zoom level should be, I think, somewhere here. If we lock it to the right zoom level, I think that, or possibly even that, should be still possible to zoom in, and then it starts to matter, because as you can see, if I start to tweak it, I mean, this is super dirty because we're prototyping here, but having those distortions, I think, is going to destroy a lot of the artistic appeal, the aesthetics of the map, and we want to avoid them. So let me see, what else can I do here? Oh my god, I'm breaking my... let me see what happens if I activate place props. Well, then it should actually place props alongside it. So this is what we want to tackle in June. This is our work package says we want to have roads and road handling finished by the end of May. There's not much to do left apart from dealing with the intersection topic and dealing with the docking of intersection roads. We're going to talk about that at the end of May, when the next mapping it out is there. Right, and then in June we want to actually take our time and focus on the building placement, so that we then slowly start to transition into how do buildings are placed, how do we implement brushes and stuff like that, so that you can actually start to colorize and finalize your aesthetics on the map. Right. Cut through. What is cut through doing? Keep in mind, this is prototyping, which means it can crash. So if I create a road, if I create a road here, it should actually cut through, or crash. There you go. I told you things are crashing. While I load up the editor once more, there was a question. Any ETA for city maps in alpha so we can also start messing with it? Yes, I've answered that already. We want to have the basic tools ready, which is late summer, early fall. That's when we're going to open it up to you and you can play around with it. Rough timeline for going into even alpha testing. Yes, well, that's how it is. I mean, we want to finish the tools to a degree where we say we're happy with them from our perspective, and while we then go back to work on world map stuff, we are collecting your feedback on city maps, and then start implementing your feedback into city map making. And hopefully that allows us next year to actually have a version 1 for the city map maker, the world map maker, and then we can slowly start to look at V6, how's the progress on V6, and implementing that into DEIOS, so you have the next tier, which then would be Battlemaps. What are the steps ahead for the city map maker that you want to have finished to hand it to us? Oh, there you go. So I think there are. We already have the rudimentary coloring system for stage coloring, and the roads tool is again to some degree getting finished, where we say, okay, now the roads tool is looking good. The roads tool, so the props tool is done, because the props tool is the same tool that works in the world map editor. It just needs to be ported over and fed with the right assets. So we don't have to worry about prop placement, because obviously you want to manually place your props as well. The brushes are coming with the, so once we do the UV mapping for the seamless textures for roads, we also do the UV mapping for brushes, so that you can use texture brushes instead of just color brushes, which is another tool that you want to have. And since our April work that went into the roads tool pathing, the pathing roads tool, is something that we have already done, we can use that to use it for cliffs and city walls and stuff like that. So the text tool can also just transition over. So I would say the basic tool set is stage coloring with water bodies, roads and automatic building placement, color and texture brushes, city wall pathing, and text. And then of course export and stuff like that. But that also is part of the DEIOS world map functionality that just needs to be kind of plugged in. So those roughly is the idea of where we want to be when we hand it to you. And then you can start playing around with it. And there are other things that we want to do. We don't know yet whether or not we're going to tackle them in the first throw. What we call MVP. That's the district tool and the growth tool. Those are two other tools that we want to experiment with. But again, as you said, we have a tough timeline here and a tight timeline here. So we want to make sure that we have the core essentials for the city map maker ready while you are testing and we're collecting feedback and we can see what you're doing with it. We start tweaking and optimizing world maps, and then we come back to city maps. And that's more or less the cycle that we envision on how we do development and like continuous development moving forward. Right, okay, so I should have loaded up the city map demo once more. Let's bring it over. Let's see what else we have. I think another tool that I would like to show is, I think that's also really nice. Instead of freehand, so whenever you have freehand, you can draw roads like that. But especially when you work with the gridded city, with the city grid, you might want to just do something like, now I'm doing curved stuff, which is also nice, but that's not what I wanted to show. What I wanted to show is this. So you can do drag and drop city grids to very quickly create those things. And again, those intersections are the next things that we want to work with and solve, as well as the fact that you want to, let's undo that. I might have broken it again. No, there you go. If you drag a road into another road, I think it should dock to that road. And when I move a road section, I can decide whether or not I want to move all docked roads or just the single one. And therefore, the docking to roads is something that we also want to tackle this month. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not sure how much feedback is necessary or is helpful. If I would be handing this to you for testing right now, I don't think that you would enjoy very much playing with it. I think the roads tool needs to be finished, and I think there needs to be a first set of cities, because city assets. Because you want to create a city map. Otherwise, you would be prototype testing like we are doing right now. And frankly speaking, that is something where we need, as a team, need to focus on the internal feedback that we have for each other, which is bug reports, UX, UI feedback. So having too many cooks in that part of the development process might not be helpful to us. I'm pretty sure that when we hand this out, it is not in a state where we say, this is super finished, we're not ever going to touch it. It is going to be in a state where we feel like, okay, you can create city maps or hamlet maps or village maps with it. But this is also when we actually have cleared our mind enough to be able to receive and listen to feedback. Because right now, I think it would just confuse the heck out of us if we would also be getting feedback on things that aren't really finished for us internally. So don't think that we're handing it out too late. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you teach me wrong, and maybe you say no, till we want to have this earlier to give you better feedback. Either way, I think we need to be internally as a team, we need to be confident that such a tool is finished from our side, and we are open for feedback on it, and not have feedback on something that we are still working on, which would then be just useless or very confusing in terms of communication. Right. So that's the current state of development, and since we are already on May the 2nd, it's only 28 days before we have another stream, and then Guy will be hopefully cured and back. Which means that then we will ideally be at a point where we say, okay, roads are being closed down, we're happy with the roads tool. We now start looking at the actual building distribution alongside the road. Okay, let me quickly check. Are there any more questions? No, I don't think so. So guys, thank you very much. As always, if you want to chat with us, or follow up on the conversations that we're having on the stream right now, come to Discord, DungeonFog.com/Discord. Join us on our Discord. Here you can chat with other world makers, battle map makers, with the development team, with the staff, and we're super happy to have those conversations with you, because I think it helps us tremendously to improve what we're doing and probably see if we're doing things not the way that you expect them, and put a stop to it, so that we can actually adjust. Guys, it was wonderful as always. So have a good day, have a good evening, have a good night, whatever it is. I say thank you very much and happy map making. See you all. Bye.